Good Sunday morning to you. It is February 23rd, 2025. Today we're going to talk about compartmentalized making. Is it a good practice for junk journals or does it even work for junk journalers? Now, if you're confused already, this is based on the two little mini make sessions that Luise Heinzl and Barbara from 49 Dragonflies did last Thursday and then again last Sunday afternoon. Last Thursday evening session, they went into great depth to try and explain the concept of compartmental making. Many people were confused and thought they were referring to or renaming the practice of mass making. But in the end, we came up with some distinctions based on that discussion. And there were mixed reactions. I'll just be honest with you. And I am having a mixed reaction as well. I am um, filming bits and pieces over the week to try and demonstrate it. And this demonstration happens to be a masterboard example where I cut out my brown packing paper and I laid down some background elements. I stamped this lady with both white pigment ink, which does not show up well on camera on the screen. And then I also stamped her with some Stays on Black. This is based on a previous masterboard make that I did I think Sunday afternoon, as a matter of fact, while they were talking. And I liked the result enough that I said, "Ooh, let me try that again in a different way and see where it takes me." So you could say that I am compartmentalized making master boards or master prints for this part of my chat with you. So what do you need for compartmentalized making? All the stuff on your desk, all the boxes of scraps, and all the unfinished projects or journals that you think you might want to add elements to. So I'm going to stamp this, but I'm going to leave it largely unfinished. I'll make a master print and I'll show you that master print as well as a master print of the one I made that inspired this master page or master board make. Throughout the week, I'll be putting together other clips of other makes that fit into this category. And you say to yourself, well, you just said get out all the unfinished stuff, so why are you leaving them unfinished? And the answer is I am making elements that are unfinished that I can pull for any journal and that they fit into and use them to complete journals or other projects. And then the next thing you'll say to me is, well, that's no different than mass making. And I would beg to differ. My definition of mass making is to sit down and make a bunch of tags or pockets or what have you and complete them and then store them to use as finished elements. Um, Cover toppers comes to mind as a good example, or charms, another good example. You make those projects start to finish one by one, and then you keep them for future projects. In this case, my understanding of compartmentalized making is that you make elements that you can use, but you leave them a little bit unfinished so that you can tailor those elements to the journal that you are working on or the project you're working on. Now, other people may have taken away a different definition from compartmentalized making than I did, but that's how I'm approaching it. So now you've seen the two masters and the two master prints I can use for anything in the future. I like the second one with white thick stripes on khaki or actually packing paper because I can customize those white stripes with almost anything: stamps, stencils, paint, markers, you name it, can go in those white stripes. I'm going to spare you what I did on Monday. It was all printing and cutting. And yes, you heard me right. I cut some things. You know that I rip whenever possible, and so cutting for me is very tedious. But all these little bits and pieces that I have prepared for my stash are pieces that I will use in other things this week. And now comes the fun part where inevitably I ruin a project. I have 6x9 envelopes, really big ones, and I covered them with background papers. I used book papers in this instance, and I have two tabs. So I want a oversized tab on each of them, and I'm using my handmade paper. All I'm doing is tracing and flipping over and tracing again a box flap from a Cheerios cereal box, which makes a passable tab if you need an oversized one. And I struggle with fussy cutting as I always do. I'll spare you the struggle, and now I'm dry fitting to make sure that I can cover that tab space. I do have to cut that down a little bit, and I end up trimming both sides of the envelope tab just to make sure that my handmade paper tab shows and that little bit of extra does not. Then I move on to shading the tabs, and that's when things get a little sideways, as we will see in the next clip. So I was just going to use walnut stain, and then I got this bright idea. Oh, I have this distress paint, and it has a dauber top. The top was clogged because I don't use it very much, but it is a really beautiful antique gold, and in cleaning up the cap, it spilled. Let's just move on and see if we can't fix this. This reverse page, I have to put a band across the top because it's way too short, as you can see, and the postal indicia shows right there. So I cut a band of the same paper that I used for the ephemera box. I really like it. Unfortunately, it's just really badly printed. But if I use it in small pieces, it's okay. And so that's what I used for my band across the top before putting my handmade paper tab on that piece. So I fitted it on there, hit the spots where I hadn't gotten enough glue, trimmed it down, and then put my handmade paper tab over, and that turned out really well. All of these, as I said, are made out of 6x9 envelopes. I did not use the windows on these envelopes for this particular project because this, as I said in the beginning, is a compartmentalized make. So I'm making an insert with these Windows envelopes as side loading oversized pockets. It'll obviously have to go in a larger journal. And I thought, in for a penny, in for a pound. Why not just use the big blob of paint on that tab as a design feature? So I left it. I had a little bit of trouble lining this up because I wanted to preserve the book title. In the end, I could not because in order to line it up straight on the back, which is the more visible horizontal line, I ended up losing the title or most of it. And that's totally okay for this make. Again, I'm making unfinished pieces. So I can't tell you right now what I'm going to do to fix the paint issue on that first front pocket. I used full-size book pages, as you can see, knowing that I was going to cover a lot of it with other elements. And the middle pocket does not have a tab on it. Since they're all side loading, later on I can make that middle section a slash pocket or some other kind of pocket. All of the book pages on one side had a color in this case stripes, except for that last page, is actually some kind of farm inventory type ledger sheet. And now we need to bind this three, I guess you could call them folios, three folder, what have you, whatever it is. And I'm just dry fitting to make sure that I have enough folds so that I can bind them all together. And that's what I do now. As you can see, I skip every other valley so that I have tabs going on each side of the closed edge of these folios. I used a scrap piece of scrapbook paper that I don't really like very much. It's often the case when I buy a paper pad that I might like 4 out of 20 and really love whatever it is that's on the page. And the rest of them I'm kind of indifferent about. And so I end up with these stray pieces of scrapbook paper that, or in this case, this is a little bit heavier. It's more like cardstock. Um, at any rate, I, like many people, end up having these stray pieces that I never use because I don't like them. And so in this instance, they serve the purpose very well as a binder for these three folios. Lining these envelopes up was a little tricky because I had very little wiggle room and I had to work pretty quickly, even though I was using wet glue. In the end, they all got glued down and they're lined up as good as they're going to be lined up. I do have a couple of extra um, pieces at the back, and I can either cut them off or I could maybe sew a slim signature into one of them in sometime in future. For right now, I'm satisfied with it, and I'm going to resist the temptation to cover those antique gold blobs on the first and second folios because this is a compartmentalized make, not a complete make. Last one to give compartmentalized making a fair try is library cards with little half pockets. I have not ever made library cards that I can remember, and so I thought this is pretty straightforward. I'll just print out a library card graphic and I'll cut little half pockets, ink them up, and, you know, see if this is a good, bad, or indifferent application for compartmentalized making. I used file folders and a little bit of an unconventional way to do this. Normally, if you put a back on your pocket like I'm doing, it's a taller back so that the card fits down into it and you see a little bit of the back. I didn't want that. I just wanted a small, short pocket because these library cards are a little bit undersized for, what is normal size for a library card. And so off we go. Now, I did want to give these a try because I'm working on a little sort of, I don't know, not a branding thing, but I'm working on a set of pieces that I want to be part of my journals going forward. A book template, or not a book template, a book plate, and a checkout or a library card pocket for my lendables. Not that I have that many, but I want those elements to be part of my junk journals, just like a lot of times I will leave the name of the page of the book somewhere in my book page elements, or if I'm doing an altered book, I will leave the copyright page and the title page and so forth. So while I'm finishing this up, let's re-ask the question. What do I think of compartmentalized making, and is it appropriate for junk journalers or junk journaling? I have to say that one of the things that was discussed at the end of the second sort of mini make session was that Barbara found parts of it a little bit challenging. And what she found challenging is different than what I found challenging. I kind of like the idea, actually, of making elements that are commonly used in junk journals that we don't normally buy. Like, for example, library pockets. We don't normally buy those, we make them. So, for those kinds of elements, I like the idea. Make the element up to the point where it's not customized to any one journal and can go in any journal with a little bit of finishing technique like ribbons or stickers or washi tape or what have you. That's all good. Background papers and masterboards, I think we already do that, so that's probably good as well. The one that I have a little bit of difficulty with is the one that I made that's the large 3 folio set. That one was, I think, too time consuming because of the size for a compartmentalized make. I think I would wait and use those envelope elements as I need them. I'd like to thank both Barbara of 49 Dragonflies and Luise Heinzl for the 2 make sessions. I'll link them in show notes. It was a lot of fun. Thank you, ladies. And thank you for showing up. God bless you, and I'll see you real soon.